In the essence of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. Before we start this evening's financial aid presentation, the APTO would like to say a few words.
Good evening. I'm Julie Schwingbeck. I'm the co-chair of the APTO. And if you don't know what the APTO is about at this point, then it probably won't do any good for me to tell you. I'm here to tell you tonight that we do offer scholarships to seniors. We do have an application process that the guidance will send out the applications in February or March timeframe, and we'll make our decisions in May. The reason I'm here is because it's critical that you are actually an APTO member if your child would like to be considered for this sponsorship. And so I have forms in the back, and I'll be here on your way out if you want to pick one up. That would be great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Julie. All right, so good evening. My name is Lisa Connery. I'm the Director of Guidance here at Algonquin. Tonight we're going to be talking about financial aid. You know, this is an exciting time, but also a very stressful time. So now that your students have worked hard for the past 3 years and challenged themselves, and you've been out on campuses, now we got to figure out, all right, how are we going to pay for all of this, right? This is where the fun begins. We're fortunate to have a presenter here from the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority. They are the experts on the financial aid, so we really do appreciate their expertise. They do have some handouts there. They have great stuff on their website, little webinars, things you can review. You can call and ask questions of them, and they'll go over all of that. Lori will go over all that during the presentation. So as you kind of begin, we've been meeting with students. The counselors have been doing individual appointments, reviewing lists with the schools, kind of going over the nuts and bolts of applying. I have to say, so far, this class is in very good shape. They really heeded our advice and been doing some nice work over the summer. So we appreciate that. They've been out on the campuses, so I think that is key. I do know that some students have a few schools to continue to look at, and I would encourage you, we have a 4-day weekend coming up next weekend. I would encourage you to kind of get back out there. Hopefully the weather is nice, and finalize a few of those visits, because there really is nothing compares to a campus visit when you're trying to finalize your list and really figure out what might be the right fit for your student. So I would encourage you to continue to do that. As well, we've been encouraging the students to attend the college rep visits in the CRC. Now, one of the most important things as you're kind of assessing your list, we talk a lot with students about reach and realistic and safety schools. One thing that you really also need to take into consideration when compiling the list is really finances. You need to make sure that, your list is kind of covering you and your student financially. So I always, I was talking with a student today, and I was saying to the student, it's really not about, you don't know yet. You don't know what the possibilities are. You don't know what the finances for the various schools look like. It's really about creating options for yourself and making sure that, you have financial options. So it's lots of times looking at some of those safety schools that are private schools where your student is a standout student on that campus. And maybe that school wants to recruit your student and would give them considerable merit money. Sometimes in those cases, that school ends up being more affordable than, say, a state school, okay? So you really don't know. It's all about looking at balancing. I encourage my students to have state schools on their list. Not that that's where they're going to attend, but it's for safety reasons, financial reasons. So at the end of the day, that, UMass Amherst is, $25,000 a year, and that's doable. So regardless of what else comes in for financial aid packages, you've covered yourself, okay? So our MIFA rep will talk more in depth about that, but I want you to think about that as you're reviewing your list, your students' list with them, and talking about finances. I think it's really important that you're having that conversation now. If you're having that conversation in April, when all of those, financial aid packages have come in, it's a little late. I think right now it's important to sit down as a family, be very realistic regarding what you can and can't do, and then review the list accordingly. If you have questions, If you feel as though maybe your student needs, an additional safety school or something, reach out to the guidance counselor. Ask them. They'll provide you with some feedback on that, okay? One thing that I want to cover, because this is going to be one of our last presentations, but we do send stuff out through Naviance. So just because I'm reviewing this tonight, we'll follow up with information through Naviance to remind people that it's now time to begin to think about scholarships, okay? For the majority of our students, they will, scholarship money comes through the form of local scholarships. There's a lot of national scholarships, but as soon as we say national, they become very competitive, so of course they're going to be more challenging to kind of, get some of those scholarships. So a lot of our students do get the majority of their scholarships through local scholarships. Our Career Resource Center handles a lot of local scholarships. That process will really begin in January. We do typically have a local scholarship Corridor 9 that becomes available in November. So students could check on Naviance for the Corridor 9 scholarship. But pretty much most of the scholarships start after January. And you basically, have to go into Naviance. The nice thing is you don't have to come into school. You don't have to go into a book at school. We have everything online. So if you and your student just set some time aside, right, to sit down on the weekend and review the list of scholarships, because we will add new scholarships like every week. On a daily basis, scholarship applications come in, and we put them into Naviance. So if you just start, say mid-January, sitting down on the weekend, saying, all right, log into Naviance, and let's start looking at some of these scholarships, and let's determine which scholarships you're eligible to apply to, and then I want you to complete the application, all right? And so what we're going to do is we're on Naviance. I'm going to show you here really quickly. I hope this didn't log me out. This is the home page when you first log in. If you go under colleges, we've been working through this at the senior workshop. We showed you, how colleges I'm thinking about, colleges I'm applying to. Now we're just going to scroll down below here, and we have scholarships and money down here. You can see there's a national scholarship search button here, and you can go through and fill out various criteria, answer different questions, and that will generate a list of potential scholarships that your student could apply to nationally, okay? Where we house the local scholarships is right here under scholarship list. Now when I click on it, there's not really anything under there right now, but that will change drastically, okay? And so you will see on here, the list will grow. It will have the deadline on here, the amount of the award. You can click on the scholarship to read about what the criteria is, and the application is on here as well, okay? And so students can go through, they complete the application, and then they bring the application down to the CRC. And Linda Hutchins in the Career Resource Center, she's fantastic. She does a great job with the students. She'll answer their questions. If a student, needs some assistance with the scholarships, completing them, she'll help. She does all the transcripts. She'll help with letters if a student needs a letter of recommendation to go with the scholarship, okay? So they'll be able to click right on it, read about it, do the application, bring any supporting materials right into the CRC. We pull them all together, all supporting documents, and we send it to whatever scholarship committee they need to go to, okay? So it's pretty streamlined. We will send out another email. We go over this with the students as well, but we send out an email, and it's actually a video, which is kind of cool, and it walks you back through, where the heck do I go? What do I sign into? So it will tell you again, Naviance, and where to go and what to do for the scholarship process, okay? A lot of great opportunities. I think you'd be surprised. Sometimes there are scholarships that few students apply to, which is shocking to me. So I have been sharing with my students what I think they should be focused on right now, because it gets very stressful. There's a lot of information and there's a lot to do. I encourage them to focus on the application process first, right now, okay? So they're going to be completing their applications, writing their essay, taking those last ACTs and SAT exams. They're going to be pulling all of those documents together. And once they've done all of that and they've submitted it to the colleges, then you wait, right? You wait to hear back from them. That is the perfect time to really begin to complete those scholarship applications, to do those searches and look for alternative funding. In addition, you guys will be working on your FAFSA and your CSS profile, which they'll go over tonight. So it's a very stressful time. A lot of the kids have a lot of activities, jobs, rigorous course loads. So I like to just kind of chunk things for kids. Okay, let's focus on your applications. Let's get that essay written. Let's do this first. As soon as that, is kind of handled and they've applied, all right, let's switch gears here. Let's sit down. What have they loaded into Naviance for scholarships? Okay? And again, we'll send this all out. So at this point, this is just a little brief overview. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Lori Pelletier, and she is going to go over all the fun stuff for how to pay for college. All right? Thanks for being here, Lori.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Do I just escape out of this?
Oh, sorry.
I don't want to ruin your thing. Can everyone hear me okay in the back? Okay. I kind of talk with my hands, so if the microphone goes over here, just bring me back. I wanted to quickly go over what you have in your packets. Okay, I think it's working. I just have to have it closer.
You want me to turn it up a little bit louder? I'll go back there and turn it up.
He can, okay. Thank you. So I always forget at the end, but one of the pieces of paper that you picked up on the table out front is an evaluation form. We'd love your feedback. You can drop it back off on that table on your way out. We would greatly appreciate it. And there's a way on that form to sign up for emails from MIFA if you want to continue to get correspondence from us. We're not selling anything, we're just providing information. So that's just a quick blurb about that. The other information is just yours to have, and later on in the presentation we'll talk about FAFSA Day. There is a little card that has information about FAFSA Day, so you can have the website for that. So that's what the handouts are. So welcome to College Financing, the scariest presentation in your life. My name is Lori Pelletier. For 7 years I was the Director of Financial Aid at Anna Maria College in Paxton. I also worked at Becker College in Worcester. I've worked at UMass Medical as a consultant. And for 10 years, I've been with a company called College Coach as a financial coach advisor for families. And I also have been presenting for MIFA for over 10 years, these financial aid nights. Financial aid and paying for college is one of those big mysteries that everyone wonders about and no one really understands. But that's why we're here tonight. We're going to get all the facts so that you will no longer think that it's a mystery. It won't be a mystery for your family. So again, we're not selling anything. I don't represent a loan company or a 529 plan or anything like that. We're just here to get all the facts out there. So MIFA that sponsors tonight is a nonprofit organization in Boston, started in the 1980s when the cost of college was skyrocketing and families were really struggling with how to pay for it. And they started a loan through floating bonds through the state legislature to offer loans for parents at a lower interest rate than what the federal government was doing. They also started the 529 plan, the U Fund, and the U Plan, if you're familiar with that, through Fidelity. That is also co-sponsored through MIFA, so we have our hand in that. But lately we've been more focused on these high school presentations and building up our website as a resource. So if you leave here tonight and you have follow-up questions, you can check the MIFA website. If you want to watch the video, this presentation again, or you want to go to another high school and see it, information is there about that. You can sign up, like I said, to get emails from us so that you'd get periodic emails about what you should be doing now that it's October 1st, now that it's January 1st, what should you be doing, all the different timelines. And if you have younger children, it's great to sign up for these emails early so that you don't miss anything. So our agenda tonight, we're going to talk about the type and sources of financial aid. We'll go through the application process, how financial aid decisions are made in the financial aid office, why they're treating you the way they are and why you're getting the money that you're getting or not getting. And then how do people pay for college, and then we'll go over some of the other resources that are available after tonight. One thing I neglected to tell you in my introduction is I'm also the parent of twins who are seniors in college. So just a couple years ago, I was sitting where you were sitting, and I had that same scared look on my face, like how the hell are we going to do this, putting two kids through college at the same time. But I had enough money for a bottle of water or a cup of coffee on the way over here, so I think I'm okay. I'm still standing, and we're in year 4. So a lot of my experiences that I'll talk about tonight, with my own kids may relate to some of your experiences, and you might find it helpful. So financial aid comes from a lot of different sources, but it really is money to help you pay for college. It is money that's going to reduce the cost of college. As you know, college can cost anywhere from $15,000 a year to $72,000 a year. It really varies from, an in-state community college where they live at home and you might pay $5,000 for tuition, all the way up to a very expensive private college that, tuition alone is $45,000 to $50,000 a year. When we talk about the cost of college, we're typically talking about the whole cost: tuition, fees, room and board, books, supplies, and transportation. So financial aid is offered to offset that high price. And it comes in 3 different ways. It comes in grants and scholarships, which is free money. It's the good stuff. It's what you want to get the most of. It's basically a discount on the price. Usually when we talk about grants, we're referring to money that's given to you because you financially qualified for it. It's given to you because you need it based on your income and assets. A scholarship is more based on who the student is. Are they an athlete? Are they a musician? Are they a high SAT, ACT, GPA student? So scholarships are usually based on merit, and grants are based on need. There's also work study. Work study is a part-time job on campus. It's only given on a need basis, so you have to qualify for NeedBased Aid to get work study. And it is usually minimum wage. My son is at Northeastern University in Boston, and he works his work study job in the athletic department washing the uniforms. He's doing laundry, which he's never done laundry at home. Little did I know I had to pay him $11.25 an hour in order for him to do laundry. But, he puts in a load, sits down, does his homework while it's going through the cycle, and then takes it out, puts it in the dryer, and he gets paid to do that. So there's a lot of different work study jobs on campus. Work study is not deducted from your bill. It's a way for the student to earn money to cover those extra costs, like books, supplies, transportation, entertainment. So it's great as a parent if your child has a work study job, then you don't have to keep sending them money every month and wondering whether they're budgeting it okay. It also helps when the student has summer earnings. It helps keep, those earnings going longer if they have a work study job. If you don't qualify for work study, a lot of campuses will have non-work study jobs as well. So you could possibly pick up one of those. College kids have a lot of downtime. It's not like high school where they're in class from 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. They have classes sporadically throughout the week, and you know what happens with downtime with a 19-year-old. So video games, Netflix, whatever. So having a part-time job is very doable for most students, unless maybe they're a Division I athlete. The last type of financial aid is student loans. So a lot of people will tell me, I applied for financial aid and I didn't get anything. And I said, well, you got a student loan, right? Yeah, but that's not financial aid. Well, a student loan is considered financial aid because who else is going to loan your students some money? They're 18 years old. They don't have a credit score. They don't have a job. Nobody's going to lend them money, but the federal government will allow them to take a student loan. We will talk about that later on. And it basically doesn't change how much you owe. It just changes when you pay it. So a student loan allows you to defer some of the cost until after graduation and then have the student pay it off. A lot of families will think about getting a student loan just so their child will have some skin in the game where they have some responsibility for paying it off. Even if you help them pay it off, it still builds a credit history for your child. So you may want to think about taking a student loan just for that reason. Now, merit-based aid falls under the financial aid category, and that's where scholarships come in. So what Lisa was referring to as the local scholarships, sometimes that can be merit-based. But colleges also offer merit-based aid. And you'll find your merit-based aid offers mostly come from your safety or no-problem schools. Colleges where your child stands out and is above average, usually based on GPA and SAT or ACT score. So knowing where your child fits in the applicant pool is really crucial, and having safety schools on your list, if you want to get a discount on the price, really helps to have safety schools and apply to them. Most of the time, a scholarship from a college is for all 4 years. So you can financially plan ahead and say, okay, now we can afford all 4 years. Usually there is a GPA requirement to keep the scholarship year after year. I'm going to use my son as an example. He gets crazy when he hears that I tell people this, but at Northeastern he got a $10,000 merit scholarship. Not bad, but kind of a drop in the bucket when you're talking about a $65,000 school, but $10,000 free money with a 3.0 GPA. He came home at the end of freshman year, he had a 2.97. I know. So they did put him on probation for a semester and let him bring up his GPA so that he could get it reinstated. But anyways, it was one of those moments as a parent that you kind of dread. So when you're being offered merit aid, it usually is with the admissions offer. So most colleges do not require any additional applications to qualify for their scholarships, but you need to check. So this is something the student or you could be doing now, that you're narrowing down the list of colleges that you're applying to. Check on their website, or if you go for a visit, do you offer merit aid? What's the requirement? How do I qualify? When will I be notified? Most colleges, like I said, just use the admission application to qualify. Some will have you do an extra essay. Some will require that you apply early action. And some of the really selective ones will have you come in for an interview. Like, they'll review your admission application and say, we think you're a candidate for our highly selective scholarship. Come in for an interview and we'll see if you can get it. And they really vary from everything from $5,000 a year to full tuition, some even full tuition, room and board. The other thing about the merit scholarships is, I'm trying to think of how I was going to say this, but again, you want to have the right schools to apply to. The Ivy League schools, the highly selective colleges, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, MIT, Amherst, Bowdoin, Bates, they do not offer merit aid. So if you're lucky enough to get accepted to one of those schools, the only way you're going to get a discount is if you qualify for need-based aid. And it can come down to a very hard decision for a family where you might have a very high-ranking school where you luckily got accepted but you didn't get any money, and then you have other schools that are maybe not as high-ranking where you got a lot of money, and you have to make that decision. Are we making a financial decision, or are we going on, you know, the reputation of the school and where the student wants to go? So definitely check with the schools. And the schools are very upfront on their websites about whether they have merit aid or not, and you can also ask when you're there on a tour. So the other type of money that's available is under the need-based aid category. Yes? Right, so on the previous slide, merit aid, like I said, sometimes they'll require that you apply early action to qualify for their merit aid offers. And early action may be November 1st or November 15th, depending on the school. But that's separate from need-based aid. Okay. And we will take plenty of questions at the end as well. Did you have a question regarding that?
Yeah, so the merit aid, you don't apply for merit, it's just after.
Unless the school has a separate application for their merit aid, no, you don't apply for it. It's part of the admission process. So if you think about this, the admissions officer is sitting there reading the applications that are coming in, and then this stellar application comes in. And what they're really doing is they're saying, look at this kid. If we don't offer this kid money, they're not coming here. They're going to go somewhere else. I worked at Anna Maria where the average GPA was like a 3.0 or a 2.8. If we had a kid come in with a 3.5, we were like, oh, wow, if we get this kid to come here, our average GPA is going to go up. They're going to do great things for our campus, and they're going to elevate the classroom. So we want this kid, so we're going to offer them $8,000 or $10,000 because we know they're looking at other schools that are more well-known than us. So, and other than the Ivy Leagues, usually, the state schools offer aid, merit aid as well, but not as much because their price tag's already lower. So you can get merit aid at UMass Amherst or Worcester State, but you'd get more at a private school because the private schools cost more to begin with. They have more money to give. They're competing with the state schools over price, and they have less red tape and rules and regulations because they're not structured under the state government. So private schools usually give more merit aid than the public schools, but they both do. And there is merit aid also from the state of Massachusetts. For those students who scored high enough on the MCAS, they can get the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship, which gives them a discount on tuition at a state-sponsored school. So merit aid can come from different places. But need-based aid is where a lot of people really get confused and tripped up, so we're gonna go over that. Need-based aid is based on your family's finances, your income, your assets, your family size, the number of kids in your family, and the number of kids in your family going to college. And the financial aid applications are used to determine your eligibility for need-based aid. So you fill out the applications, report all your information, and the schools will look at that and determine how much they can give you. It is a standardized formula that the federal government sets so that every family is treated the same. And that's where grants, loans, and work study come from, is under the need-based aid heading. Most aid that's out there is need-based. There's more money that way. And in order to keep need-based aid, just like merit scholarships, you have to maintain a certain grade point average, usually a 2.0. You can't be failing out of school and continue to get federal loans and grants, things like that. When you apply for need-based aid, you're applying for money from the federal government, the state government, and the college itself. And the college will notify you how much money and the type of money you qualify from all of those resources. So the sources of financial aid, again, are federal. The federal government are tax dollars. They create a federal Pell Grant, federal SEOG grant, federal Perkins loan, federal student loan, federal work study program. If you want to read more about it, there's a website, studentaid.gov. The state of Massachusetts has their own money. When you fill out the financial aid application, you're going to list that you're a resident of Massachusetts. That's all you need to do. The state will receive your data and see if you qualify for any state funding. And then each college or university offers their own money that's called institutional aid. And then there are other agencies that offer scholarships as well. As Lisa was talking about in the beginning, there's local organizations that sponsor scholarships. There's national ones like Coca-Cola, the Buick Car Company, the Ronald Reagan Foundation. There's a lot of different agencies out there that offer scholarships on the national level, highly competitive. And I would also recommend that you check with your employer. A lot of employers will offer scholarships to employees' children. Especially if you're in a union or if you belong to the American Legion or the Elks or the Lions Club, things like that, there's scholarship money that way. Whenever you can apply for a scholarship where it's a smaller group of applicants, you have a much better chance of getting the money. Check with your grocery store, your bank, your credit union. There can be a lot of different resources for these scholarships. High school senior year is the best time to get all of these scholarships. They are still available for kids who are already in college, but it gets more limited as they go along. So the financial aid breakdown of, where does all the money fall? Unfortunately, you can see by this slide, federal student loans is the biggest piece of the pie. It's the biggest bubble there. 33% of all the money given is from loans. Institutional, so from the college itself, grants and scholarships is 23%. So that's what a lot of people don't realize, is that these schools that have the higher price tags, they're also giving you a discount. So they publish one price, but you end up paying another. I had seen a statistic, 89% of students at private colleges do not pay full price. So whether you qualify for need-based aid or merit-based aid, they're offering some discount. But they like to charge that high price just so you think that they're a better school. So it's kind of a scam. Then there are federal tax credits, private grants, state grants, and work study is a small piece of the pie. So how do you apply? As you all know, the application process is starting on October 1st. You don't have to fill out the forms October 1st. And if you think about it, it's a federal application that we're going to talk about. Things can happen. If too many people log in on October 1st, that website could crash. So I wouldn't wake up at midnight on October 1st and sit down to fill out the FAFSA form. You have better things to do. But check the deadlines for the schools that you're applying to. The earliest deadline date I've seen is November 1st. Even most of them are November 15th, and that's usually only if you're applying early decision. So a lot of schools will have deadline dates into December or January. Yes? That's a big question we'll have to take afterwards. It would get me too far off track. Sorry. So check with your schools. If you have 10 schools on your list that you're applying to for admission, you may have 10 different deadline dates. You want to look, what's my earliest? Because when you apply for financial aid, you fill out one form and it goes automatically to the schools you tell it to. So you need to find out what's your earliest deadline. The reason why we say to check the deadlines, you don't want to be late. Most people are not late. You're here tonight, you're not going to be late on your applications. But the earlier you get it in, the closer to the top of the pile your child's file will be, and the better chance you have of getting the maximum amount of funding. Some of the funds that colleges have do run out. They have a set amount of work-study funds. They have a set amount of SGOG funds. They might have their own institutional budgets that they have to adhere to. So the earlier the better, but don't stress out about it and do it at midnight on the 1st of October. As it says here, some of the standard deadlines are still way into February and March. So the FAFSA form, that's what everyone, the big thing that no one understands, is the free application for federal student aid. It's a federal application. It's free to fill it out. It's online. If you go to the website today, you can't get into the application. You have to wait until October 1st. So it becomes available on the 1st. I think the biggest thing and the hardest thing for a lot of families is what's called the FSA ID. It's a Federal Student Aid Identification Number, and you have to apply for it. And this is something you can do now, and I do recommend that you do it about a week before you want to fill out the FAFSA form. Both the student and the parent need an FSA ID. It's the way that you sign the form electronically. So in the old days, there was paper and mom and dad signed it and the student signed it and sent it in. Well, now it's all electronic, so they want an electronic signature, and that's done with the FSA ID. It's a very secure website, and it asks you every question you can think of. 5 different security questions: your name, address, social security number, date of birth. And the biggest thing, and I did this wrong myself when I first did it for my kids, you need 2 separate email accounts. So I set up one for my son, and I said, oh, I'll put in my email address. He's not going to check his email. I'll put in my email address. And then I went to do mine, and I couldn't use my email address again because I had already used it on his. So you may need to create some new emails, which wouldn't be a bad thing. Some people have done it already for scholarship searches and all the college application. You may want to have a new email address that's just for this process, but just make sure that you're checking it on a regular basis. So you do need an email address separate from the parent and the child. It can be either parent who does it. Both parents don't need it. And you use the FSA ID year after year, over and over again. If your child takes student loans, they'll keep using their FSA ID to check on their loans and pay their loans. So it's something that will stick with you for a while. It's a very long password. It's got to be 8 to 30 characters, and it's got to have upper and lower case, and it's got to have numbers and characters. It's pretty specific. Yes? So if you have more than one child going to college, you can use your ID over and over again. It's yours, it's specific to you. You can continue to use it for other children, but this second child will need an ID. Yes. Yes, yep, for each child. Yep. So even if you have twins going to the same college, you need 2 different IDs. So FSA ID, if you put that into your browser on your computer, it will bring up the website, and you can enter in the information there. Like I said, it can take 2 to 3 days to get it. If it's very busy time, which October 1st is going to be a very busy time, it may take 3 to 5 days to get it totally 100% accurate, to be able to use it. Right, your email would be used for your ID, and your child will need their own email address for their ID. Yep. Okay. You do the FAFSA form every year. So if you want financial aid, NeedBased Aid, you have to do it every year. When you're applying for financial aid for sophomore, junior, senior year of college, it's not October 1st, it's not rush, let's get it done, but the school will have its own deadline date. You will use your FSA ID over and over again. The FAFSA form will be repopulated with your information, so the second time you fill it out for that child, It's not as difficult because it's already pre-populated with name, address, social security number, date of birth, all of those things. There is a function of the FAFSA form. If you put that you have 2 kids in college, it will ask you at the end if you want to transfer your information to the second child, so you don't have to re-enter everything. I've tried it myself. It didn't work, but it might have been the browser that I was using, but they are trying to get that. It is getting more logical where it will skip questions if they don't apply to you. If you answer one question one way, they'll pull out some of the other questions that don't apply to you. So on the FAFSA form, you have to report whether you're a U.S. citizen or not, or if you have a green card. You put the colleges that the student is applying to. You can list up to 10 schools. How many here have more than 10 schools on their list? Oh, just a couple, okay. So if you have more than 10 schools, you have to identify which 10 you want to send it to first. You list all those. You wait for it to be processed, which can take 2 or 3 days. When you get the confirmation that it's been processed in your email, you will go back in and make a correction. So there's a couple things about the FAFSA form. You can correct it at a later date. So don't worry about making a mistake. You can fix it. And it is the type of form that you can save it and go on. So if you are sitting there filling it out and you're like, I give up, I can't do this, I'm putting it aside, you can save it and come back to it at a later date. One of the biggest questions we get is about the parents. Which parents fill out the form? So if the parents are divorced or separated, it's the custodial parent who fills out the parent section of the FAFSA form. The custodial parent is the parent the child lived with the most for the previous 12 months. If that's a 50-50 situation, then it's the parent who provided more financial support. If that's 50-50, then it's the parent who will provide more financial support going forward. If that custodial parent is remarried and there's a step parent, their information goes on it as well. That's a federal regulation. So some people kind of struggle about, okay, who's filling this out, and whoever is responsible, you would also want to have that parent be the address that you're putting on your admission material as well. So if the student lives with mom, but puts dad's information on all their, dad's address on all the admission materials, it may not get matched up at the college. They might not see that this financial aid application from this address goes with the application for admission with a different address. The income on this year's FAFSA form is 2016. So that tax return has already been filed. You already know what those numbers are. And actually, you don't even have to have it in front of you because the FAFSA form does what's called IRS data retrieval. When you're in the form and you get to the income section, they'll say, did you file a tax return for 2016? You say yes. It will say, do you want to go to the IRS data retrieval and get it? You say yes. You have to answer a few more questions. It will pull in the data, the specific line numbers from your 2016 tax return to populate the FAFSA form. This year they're being really secure about it, and you won't be able to see the numbers when they come in. They'll show up as X's, but just know that it's coming from your file at the IRS of your tax return. So you don't have to mail your tax returns to anyone at that time. You don't have to have them really even in front of you to fill it out. They do also look at untaxed income. So they're going to ask you, and this is one question that a lot of people get wrong, how much money did you have in untaxed income, which can count as child support, falls into that category, or pre-tax dollars taken out of your pay to go to a 401k or a retirement plan. So although the FAFSA form doesn't ask you about your retirement savings, it will ask you about how much of your income for 2016 went to retirement savings, because that was untaxed income that you earned, but you never really saw. So they add those two numbers together to calculate your total income. It will also ask you about your savings, checking, and other property and investments that you have as of the day you fill out the form. So the income they're looking at is for 2016. The assets are as of the day you fill out the form. So if you're sitting down to fill it out on October 15th, it's what do you have at that point? For your properties, they do not include your home, but they do include vacation, rental, or investment properties. And it's the net worth. So what is it worth today minus anything that you owe against it? You'll have to come up with that calculation. Life insurance is also not counted, and if you own a small business, with less than 100 employees, that's not counted either. And then the number in the household and the number going to college. They only count the number of children going to college, so if mom or dad are taking classes, that doesn't count. You could always appeal to the school. So I know a lot of this information can be kind of wonky for different families. There's a lot of different situations. So if you have a situation where your 2017 or 2018 income is much lower or different than 2016, or you have, maybe mom or dad is going back to school for their master's degree and paying for it, and it's a big expense and you want to factor that in, all of those oddball things need to be brought to the attention of the financial aid office at the colleges you're applying to. There's no room on the FAFSA form to put a paragraph or attach a letter or anything like that. You have to reach out individually to the schools to do that. The other financial aid application that you need to know about is called the CSS Profile Form. The profile form is put out by the College Board and used at about 300 colleges across the US. I'd say 200 of them are in New England. So if you're applying to BU, BC, Babson, Bentley, Wentworth, Suffolk, Clark, Holy Cross, that caliber, that private expensive schools in the Northeast, most likely you'll have to do the profile form. It's not required by any of the state schools in New England. There are some state schools outside of New England that do require it. So this is another thing you can do when you get home tonight or later on this week, is check the schools on your list, which ones require the profile form. The profile form is an online application. It does cost money to fill it out. It's $25 for the first school and $16 for each school after it. So you might want to take a second thought of how serious are we about applying to this school. The admission application, the SAT scores, the profile application. If you have no desire to go to that school, you're wasting a lot of money to send in all these applications to these schools. The profile is a little different than the FAFSA form because it does include home equity. So they'll say, what is the current market value of your primary residence and all your other property? And it also includes the non-custodial parent. So for the FAFSA form, you figured out who's the custodial parent. The profile schools also want to look at that other parent and their income and asset information. I can take a quick question. Good question. In addition to, every school requires the FAFSA form. Some schools require the profile form. I was helping someone today who was applying to University of Pennsylvania. They require the FAFSA, the profile, and they have their own institutional app. They have 3 applications for financial aid. They really want to make sure that you really want their money. So they make you go through 3 hoops to get it. So everybody in the room is going to do the FAFSA form. Most of you, if you're looking at private schools in New England or even other places, you'll do the profile as well. And then some schools have their own institutional application and different deadline dates. So you have to kind of check them all. So the profile form is at thecollegeboard.org. College Board is the same company who manages the SAT testing. There is a list there that will tell you which schools require it, so you can check the list and see if the schools that you're interested in are on that list. After you fill out the FAFSA and the profile, the colleges and the state of Massachusetts will receive the information electronically. Nothing is done on paper. You will get notified on the FAFSA form. It's called your student aid report. It will go to the email address that was on the FAFSA form, so that you need to check that and make sure that it was submitted and that you can read it over and see if you made any mistakes or errors. And you'll get an acknowledgement from the CSS profile form as well. When you get those acknowledgements that it's been processed, then you know that the schools you listed have received the data. The only piece of advice that I offer there is some schools have more than one financial aid number listed. So I'm using this as an example, like Boston University might have Boston University Undergraduate College and Graduate College. So when you're pulling the names and numbers of the schools you're sending it to, it's all online, you want to make sure you're picking the right school and you don't choose the graduate school instead of the undergraduate school. Again, if you have any special circumstances that you want them to know about, you contact the financial aid office. Most financial aid offices will have their own form they want you to fill out. I was just talking to a gentleman today who just got his notice that he's losing his job October 20th, and he has a high school senior. So he wants to notify the schools. So he's going to ask the schools if they have a special form for him to fill out, or if he should just write a letter and submit the letter that he received from his employer. The colleges typically don't review your your financial aid applications until the student's been accepted. So if you get denied from admissions, you're not going to get a financial aid offer. The student has to be accepted in order to get a financial aid offer. Some colleges may request what's called verification documents. A verification document could be a copy of your W-2 for 2016, a copy of your tax return or your business tax return if you own a business. Typically, again, it's the profile schools that are digging deeper into more information, but they may ask for extra documentation. And if you don't comply and send that documentation, they may not give you a financial aid package. And keep in mind, the student is the consumer, they're the customer. All of these requests for documentation are going to the student. So make sure that they're checking their email addresses and the mail as well. So how does the financial aid office decide how much money you get and if you qualify? So first they look at their cost of attendance, which includes tuition, fees, room and board, books, supplies, transportation, and personal expenses. The tuition, fees, and room and board are a set charge that the college is going to charge you. The others are more of an estimate of what it will cost for 1 year based on a typical student at their school. So they say, you know, what are students typically paying for books these days, and add that in. Most colleges will publish their cost of attendance on their website. When they send you the financial aid offer, most of them will include it in the heading. You know, based on a cost of attendance of X, we're giving you this amount of money. So when you fill out the FAFSA form, the result of that and what everyone is looking for is called your expected family contribution, or EFC. Your EFC is the dollar amount the federal government thinks that you can afford towards college for one child. If you've never seen it before, sit down, have a drink next to you, and then look at the number. It's really out of whack these days, but it's an estimate of what they think you can afford, in addition to, you know, not just what you have in the bank, or it's more what you can borrow, your net worth. It's a good portion of your income, about 5% of your assets, and about 20% of the student's assets. So they look at a couple different things there to come up with your expected family contribution. They use the same formula for every family to come up with these numbers. Again, the parent's income is the biggest driving formula. And the schools that use the profile form have their own formula to come up with an expected family contribution. Again, since the profile form uses both parents in a divorce situation and they include your home equity, you could have a very different expected family contribution from the profile school than you could from a school that just uses the FAFSA form. They base the EFC on the premise that the family is the first responsibility to pay for college. So here's our cost. What can the family afford? We'll help fill in the difference. So they try to figure out what that difference is. There are EFC calculators online that you can use. There's two up here. One is at the College Board. It's very accurate. I did it for my family when we were filling out the FAFSA form. Came down to the penny. Same results as what we got from the FAFSA form. So you could do that tonight if you wanted to, if you really are manic depressive or something and want to find out what it is. How many of you have ever done a net price calculator on a college website? Great. Good to see. So we're lucky now we have these net price calculators, which we never had before. The federal government requires that every college in the country have on their website a calculator to help families figure out how much they would have to pay if they were accepted, so that people could have a plan ahead of time. So you can go to any college, search net price calculator, answer the questions as best you can, and it will show you, based on their price, if your child got accepted, how much you would get in need-based aid. Some colleges have taken it a step further, and they also will ask GPA and SAT questions. You know, what's your SAT score or ACT score? And if they are asking those questions, they're trying to factor in if the student would get a scholarship as well. So you might get a result that said, you know, based on what you put in, we think this student is eligible for a $10,000 scholarship, a $5,000 grant, a $5,000 loan, $2,000 work study, and your final balance is X. So check that out if you haven't. I always recommend to families to do it at maybe 3 schools on your list, maybe your most expensive school, your least expensive school, and then one in the middle, just to kind of see. Good. So an expected family contribution calculator is going to give you the results of the FAFSA form. And it's not going to tell you how the schools are going to interpret that. It's just going to tell you, based on the federal government's formula, this is what we think you can afford. I like to use the expected family contribution calculator to figure out if I pay off my mortgage, or if I get a raise, or if I shift money from this account to that account. How is that going to change? You know, if you have plans to make financial decisions. The net price calculator is telling you specifically at this college, this is what we're going to offer you. Because not every college can meet 100% of your need. So even if your expected family contribution is $10,000, not every college can fill the gap to replace the rest of the money. So it's going to vary school to school. And here we are. Here's the net price calculator information, but I definitely think it's worth a try, especially if you're, after tonight, concerned about finances and which schools you can afford and where maybe we should apply or not apply. So again, it is required. Some schools' net price calculators are better than others, but they all have to meet some minimum requirements. Yes? It does. So one of the questions on the FAFSA and the net price calculator and the EFC calculator is how many are in your household today, how many are going to college next year. So like if you have kids who are a senior and a junior, you could fill it out as 1 in college and then go back in and change that number to 2 in college and see how it affects your eligibility for aid, because you do apply for aid every year, so you can account for those situations where another child comes along and goes off to college. So the basic formula to qualify for need-based aid is they take the cost of attendance, they subtract your expected family contribution, and the remainder is your financial aid eligibility. Notice it's eligibility, not what you will receive. So colleges fill in that financial aid eligibility from all the different resources we talked about: the federal government, the state government, the college itself, grants, scholarships, loans, work study. They look at all those different things to fill in that gap. So here we have an example of how your EFC is impacted by the parents' assets. I've met a lot of families over the years who say, I didn't save for college. I don't have a lot of money in the bank to pay for college because I was afraid it would hurt my chances for financial aid. But we have 3 different families here: Family A, Family B, and Family C. They all have the same income, but they have very different assets. Family A has no money in the bank, Family B has $75,000, and Family C has $150,000. But their expected family contribution isn't that far off from one family to the other, because the federal and profile expected family contribution only looks at about 5% of your assets. And again, your assets are cash, checking, savings accounts, non-retirement investments, 529 plans, mutual funds, CDs, savings bonds, things like that, stock options. So there's not a big difference between Family C and Family A, but Family C has $150,000 in the bank. So it is okay to save for college and to have investments. They get counted, but they don't hurt you too much. It's the same for the CSS profile. Assets are treated the same. The CSS profile form will ask you about your retirement savings, but they do not factor it into your EFC calculation. They're just trying to capture the data, and they may use it if you went back and appealed to a school that uses the profile form and say, you know what, we can't afford this. And they'll say, well, you know what, you have $6 million in retirement. You can go use that. So they might use it in an appeal situation. In this example here, we're trying to explain the impact of your income. And this is where everyone's going to get mad and get up and leave. So if the parent's income goes up, your expected family contribution goes up. In this scenario, we have the assets being the same for all these families, but the income goes from 75 to 100 to 150. And as you can see, the expected family contribution jumps almost $24,000 from family A to family C. So a big portion of your income drives the formula. And again, it's your income from 2016. There's nothing you can do about it. It's already in the books. It's already on your tax returns. It's about 25% of your adjusted gross income. So then the big question that I get all the time is, at what point is this even worth it for me? At what point is my income too high to make this worthwhile? There's so many factors that go into the expected family contribution: your income, your family size, your number of kids in college, your age, the schools you're applying to, all of that. But as a general rule of thumb, if your adjusted gross income is above $250,000 and you have a family of 4 or smaller, then you're probably not going to get need-based aid, because at that point they're going to think you can afford about $60,000, $65,000 towards college, and you're probably not going to have an EFC low enough. Again, there are schools out there that cost $70,000, $72,000, so the higher the price school, the better chance you have. The Ivy League schools, if you're applying to an Ivy League or a highly selective college, they are much more generous than the rest of the colleges out there. They have the money to do that. So if you're applying to an Ivy League school, I would say, you could have income over $300,000 and still qualify. Right, so a grandparent 529 savings plan is not counted in the financial aid process because they don't ask you what the grandparents have. And the grandparents haven't released the money. They're holding on to it. They could give it to someone else. But when they do spend the money, when a grandparent, let's say the grandparent gives Johnny $10,000 towards tuition for freshman year. When Johnny applies for financial aid for junior year of college, he's going to have to report that $10,000 as untaxed income. So it shows up as student income because it was a gift to the student in cash when it's released. In that situation, if Johnny is qualifying for financial aid and you're worried about the impact, I would wait and use the grandparent 529 plan for junior and senior year of college, or I would only give out a little bit every year because he can have some income. Students can earn up to $6,500 a year before it starts to affect their financial aid. So how does the formula work in the financial aid office? Here we have 4 different colleges. The cost of the colleges varies greatly. As we talked about at the very beginning, we have College A, which is $60,000, College B, which is more like $40,000, College C, which is about $25,000, and College D, which is about $5,000. In this scenario, the blue portion represents the expected family contribution. This family has a $5,000 expected family contribution. So the green portion shows the eligibility for need-based aid. So in a perfect world, this student could pay the same amount of money to go to College D with a $5,000 price tag as they do to go to College A with a $60,000 price tag. They could qualify for that whole difference in grants, scholarships, loans, and work study. It just depends on the school and their policies. So I love this slide. We've been doing this for years. I'm just going to put them all in there. So here we have an example. We call it our barrel. We have a family who has an expected contribution of $5,000. We have a school with a cost of attendance of $40,000. So they applied for aid, they got accepted. The financial aid office is trying to figure out, okay, now what do we do? How do we get this kid to come here? The first thing they gave him was a scholarship for $9,500 that came from the admissions decision. So they put that in there first. Scholarships always go in first. And then they were able to give him a grant from the institutional's own money of $13,500. And then they gave him a student loan of $5,500, which is the maximum student loan you can get as a freshman is $5,500. They offered him a work study job of $3,500, and then they ran out of money. They have no other sources. They've looked at grants, scholarships, loans, work study. They've looked at the federal government, the state government, the college itself. So they have an unmet need or a gap of $3,000. So in order for this family to afford the $40,000 total cost for this school, tuition, fees, room and board, books and supplies, and transportation, they have to come up with the $5,000 expected family contribution plus the $3,000 unmet need. So now they're up to $8,000. The student needs to pay back the student loan of $5,500 after they graduate, and the student needs to earn enough money in the job to add up to, or can earn up to $3,500 in a job. And this happens at every school for every student. So you're going to see very different financial aid offers from different schools, but they may, have numbers something like this. So here's an example where we have 3 different schools, college A, B, and C. They happen to all be the same price. That doesn't really happen often, but here they have the same price. The family's expected contribution doesn't change, so their eligibility is $35,000 at each school. College A was able to meet 100% and give them everything they wanted, so that they were able to have 0 left over of unmet need. College B did a good job, a smaller scholarship, but they still owed $3,000. And then College C, they weren't able to meet the full need of the family, and they have $8,000 left over. And I can tell you from experience, your child is going to like College C, and you're going to like College A, and you might have to meet somewhere in the middle at College B. So it can turn out that way. I think the month of April is one of the hardest, as hard as it is now with SATs and applications and letters of recommendation and all of that going on now. The month of April, when you get all this information from all the schools you applied to and you have to sit at the kitchen table and figure out, okay, we have to go this way and not that way, and have that conversation with your child, that's hard as well. During April, they will, colleges will have more open houses and what they call accepted students days, where they bring back everyone who's been accepted for one last time. They wine and dine you and try to get you to say, yes, I want to come. So by April 1st, you will know where your child's been accepted. If you do everything on time, as they ask for, you'll know where they've been accepted and how much money every school is offering, and then you have to make a decision by May 1st of where they're going to go by paying a deposit. Right, so now with so many kids doing early action and the FAFSA and Profile coming out October 1st, schools are doing it a little earlier. April 1st is like the drop dead date of knowing, but yeah, you could have 30 days to decide. This is a different example, similar information, but what I wanted to point out here is there are colleges out there, I don't agree with this, but there are colleges out there that will package on their financial aid offer a parent loan. So if you just look at the bottom line number, you're like, oh, well, they're all the same. They all gave me the same amount of money. We owe the same amount at the end. But if you look at College C, they packaged in a $26,500 parent loan. Well, thank you very much. I don't want that loan. I want a grant or a scholarship. So you really need to decipher what are they offering, what are the terms of these, what's the GPA requirement to keep it? What's the interest rate on the loan? Is it a loan I can get without a credit check? What if I have bad credit? So you really want to look, what a lot of them are doing is the federal government offers what's called a Federal Parent Plus Loan, PLUS, and it's very quick and easy to get. You do have to pass a credit check. If you have a bankruptcy or foreclosure in your history, you won't qualify, but it is a pretty quick credit check and approval, and you can borrow as much as you need to cover the cost for 1 year. So what College C is doing is saying, oh, well, we can't meet their full cost, so we'll tell them, let them go out and get a Parent Plus loan. The interest rate on the Parent Plus loan is a fixed rate of 7%, and there's a 4% guarantee fee up front. So it may not be the best loan for you, it may not be the cheapest loan for you, and you may not want to borrow to pay for college. So just be careful when you get your award letters that you decipher them. So how do people put this together? People pay from their savings. They pull from their 529 plans. They pull from stock options. They might sell stock if they have it. They might have savings accounts or savings bonds that they cash in. And then they do borrow. So a lot of students and parents are borrowing to pay for college. It used to be that didn't happen. You know, I know so many people who, I paid for college myself back in the day. I went to Worcester State and I had a summer job and I paid for it. That doesn't happen anymore. The cost of college is so high that it's an investment. It's like a very nice car or a very small house. You're paying for it over 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So think of it more of it as an investment. The colleges will also offer monthly payment plans. So they will bill you each semester, but you can choose to pay on a monthly basis if you sign up in June, July, maybe August at the latest, and pay per month what you owe for the year. So if you owed, say, $30,000 as your final bill for the year, you could pay $3,000 a month for 10 months and be done with it. The nice thing about the payment plans is they don't charge you any interest on the outstanding balance. They might charge you a fee of, say, $25 to $30 to join the monthly payment plan, but then they don't charge you any interest on the balance. And if you think about it, when your kid goes off to college, I don't know at Algonquin, but do you have sports fees? Do you have busing fees? Do you have extracurricular fees? Are you paying for SAT prep and driver's education and the junior prom dress and the class ring and the yearbook? And you're feeding your kid. So you have a lot of money going out. Most people easily, you know, could be $1,000 a month you're paying for your child to be under your roof. Yes, the college bill is hanging and looming over here and it's very large, but you might have $1,000 a month to pay to college directly when they move out. I know when my twins went off to college, I didn't go grocery shopping for 3 weeks. It was heaven. My husband didn't like it, but I didn't care. So, you know, your expenses go down. My daughter was playing AAU basketball. It's $150 to join the team, no big deal. Sneakers, yeah, kind of pricey. The tournaments, up and down the East Coast, staying in hotels, eating out in restaurants, gas in the car, you know, it's a lot of money that we spend on our kids. So you might not feel like it, but you may have cash flow to pay for college. So before you jump out and get a home equity loan or take a loan to pay for college, think about, you know, what can I afford to pay out of pocket from savings or from cash flow. I wanted to take a minute to talk about the federal student loan, since all of you, if you fill out the FAFSA form and you're a U.S. citizen, you will be offered a federal student loan. There's two types, subsidized and unsubsidized. Subsidized means that according to your expected family contribution, you qualify for this loan, which is interest-free while the student goes to school. So interest is not accruing until 6 months after they graduate. Right now, the interest rate is 4.45%. Sure, the current interest rate on the student loan is 4.45%. If you qualify based on your FAFSA form, you could get it subsidized, which is interest-free while they go to school. The big problem with the student loan is that it is only $5,500 for freshman year. Might be enough to help out with a community college price tag, but at most of these schools, it's about the cost of lunch or a couple semesters of books. So the loan is 100% in the student's name. There's no cosigner, there's no credit check, and no payments are required until 6 months after graduation. If it's unsubsidized, it is accruing interest at that 4.45%. That's what it is this year. Next year, we don't know yet what the interest rate will be, but it'll probably be similar. Most kids today are borrowing the loan every year, and it does go up every year in the amount you can borrow. It's $5,500 for a freshman, $6,500 for a sophomore, $7,500 for junior and senior. So over a 4-year bachelor's degree, they're in debt for about $27,000. The payments on that are about $300 to $320 a month, depending on what the interest rates are. And that's over a 10-year repayment. But the federal loan for the student is usually the best loan to get because it has a lot of different options for repayment, a lot of different repayment plans. If your child's planning on becoming a teacher or a police officer or some other public service job like that, there's a good chance they can get the loan forgiven after so many years of repayment, get the balance forgiven. So it's a good place to start, but again, it's a drop in the bucket. Sure.
So you said for a freshman, 6,500?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And
A junior would be $7,500, and a senior would be $7,500. When they get to grad school, if they go on to get their master's or graduate degree, it's unlimited. They can borrow as much as they need, but they're all unsubsidized. So when you hear in the news that kids, are graduating with $150,000 of debt, they either have private loans from a bank, that the parents or grandparents have co-signed, or they've gone to grad school and borrowed from the federal government these unsubsidized loans to pay for all of grad school. That's where they're getting into trouble. Yes? Right, so there is a deferment option. So if your child takes a year off or goes to grad school, you can get the loans, if they're federal loans, deferred until they're back out of school. So as long as they're a half-time student, the loans can be in a deferral status. If they're unsubsidized, they're always accruing interest, even when they're in deferment. So that's where people get into trouble too. Oh, I just put them in deferment. How long ago did you do that? 10 years ago. Well, well, I don't know why they've doubled. Jeez, I don't know why either. So I just wanted to talk about some of the programs in Massachusetts. Some of you might have heard that there are some academic majors that the state of Massachusetts doesn't offer in their public schools in Massachusetts. So if you take it at another school in New England, you can pay a discounted price. So that's a tuition break you can get at an out-of-state public school. And then there are a lot of programs that really help the kids who go to community college and transfer to a 4-year after that. It's a great way to go. It's not for everyone, but for some students and families, it's a great way to save a lot of money, especially for that student who might not be really ready to go away from home or might not know what they want to study. It's a great place to start, and Massachusetts has made it very easy and affordable to transfer from a community college to a 4-year public. So there are some resources that I wanted to mention here. As you know, outside on the table, we have a little card for FAFSA Day. I just signed up to be a volunteer at the one at Worcester State on October 28th. If you or anyone you know is having trouble filling out the FAFSA form, or they don't speak English and want help filling out the FAFSA form, if you think you're going to encounter some hurdles, it's a great way. We have a presentation, but you can also just go right to the computer labs. There's people standing around, like myself, other financial aid people who will help you fill out the forms, answer any questions that you have. And then the scholarship websites. These are a great resource. I recommend starting searching for scholarships from outside resources as early as sophomore year in high school. So if you have a younger student, your senior is probably too overloaded at this point to do a lot of scholarship searching and applying because they've got so much else on their plate. But if you start early enough, you won't miss any deadline dates, and you'll be able to build your resume towards winning some of these scholarships. And then MIFA comes around in the spring to offer workshops about understanding your financial aid awards, so you can decipher, what's a loan, what's a grant, which school is going to cost the most or the least for me. So look for those details. If you sign up for the emails through MIFA, you'll be able to get them. And that's just a screenshot of our MIFA website. So what you can do now, you can sign up for MIFA emails. You can get an FSA ID for yourself and your student. You can research the deadlines that are required at the schools and the forms that are required, and maybe even a net price calculator. So that is it for the presentation portion. I thank you all for being patient. Any questions that we can bring up? I know Lisa was going to bring around, or we can use the microphone. There's got to be some questions. Okay. Okay, that's a good question. So if you're applying early action for admission, which means you probably have to have everything in by November 15th, you will probably know before January 1st if she's been accepted, and maybe the financial aid as well. My kids did early action, and some schools gave financial aid offers with the admissions, and some schools didn't. I would say if you've got the FAFSA and the profile done, if it's necessary, there's a good chance that you would know. And it might not be April 1st, it might be sometime in January. So it's whenever they have a chance to say, okay, yes, you're accepted, and we've reviewed all your financial stuff. The hard part for the colleges is they don't set their pricing for next year, usually until March. So it's hard for them to figure out how much financial aid to offer you if they don't even know what their price tag is. So that's why sometimes you have to wait till April. Early decision is different. If you're applying early decision, you'll find out your financial aid offer and your admissions offer together. Oh, she's got a microphone for you.
So did you say that for merit-based scholarships, they will let you know when they make the admission decision?
Yes, for merit-based scholarships, I'd say 99% of the time you'll find out on the admissions letter. Congratulations, you're accepted, and we'd like to offer you X amount of a scholarship. Yeah. There's a question back there. So it doesn't matter what the divorce agreement says, and it doesn't matter who claims the child on the tax return. For a custodial parent, for the FAFSA form, the definition is the parent the child lived with the most for the past 12 months. So it's okay that your divorce agreement and your tax return say one thing, but you're putting the other. That's fine. And then you just have to work it out with your spouse, your ex, about, okay, we're applying for aid, this is the schools we've come up with, and now, according to our divorce agreement, this is how much you have to pay. Okay. Over there. So on the FAFSA form, it describes a small business as either more than 50% family-owned or less than 100 employees. And if you fall into that category, you don't have to list it at all. So you just leave it blank. You can put in 0 that you don't have a business. It's only if you don't meet those requirements, they would want to know the net worth of the business. No, anything that's listed under the business would not be counted. If you're just doing business under your own name, like for example, I can say that I'm doing business under my own name for MIFA and file a little addendum to my tax return for the money I make from that, and I don't have to list it. It shows up on my 1040, so it's counted in my AGI that way. But I don't have to list the value of my business if there was value. So the income from the business, if it shows up on your tax return, it gets counted that way. If you have, what they're really trying to get at is, do you own a building and machinery and all this equipment that is worth something? So they're looking for the net worth of the business. So for most people that I meet, it doesn't apply to them because if they have a business that's bigger than 100 employees, then they have it incorporated. If it's smaller than 100 employees, you don't have to list it. All right. And again, that's okay. So if you think about your W-2, there's one box that has your total income, and then there's another box that's your taxable income, and there's another box that has your pre-tax dollars that went to retirement. If you add the pre-tax dollars that went to retirement plus your taxable income, that equals your total income. So on your 1040 tax return or 1040 EZ or either one, it's only got your taxable income. Your untaxed income that came out before taxes to go to your retirement doesn't show up on your tax return. Right. They will pull it through the IRS data retrieval. Yeah. So I guess the reason I bring it up is because a lot of people will say, my adjusted gross income is $100,000. Yeah, but how much did you have to go to your 401k? If you had $10,000 to go to your 401k, you really earned $110,000 last year. So your income's not 100, it's 110. So, but there are two different lines on the FAFSA form that get completed with that. One's taxable and one's untaxed. Yes, it will come automatically when it goes to the IRS. Right. The only other thing that won't come that you'll have to fill in is if you receive child support, And it's not child support just for the child who's going to college, it's for all your kids. That's counted as untaxed income. You'll have to fill that out. Yep, yes. Mm-hmm. So she asked about a gap year, if your child decides to take a year off. I recommend applying for admission and financial aid and then going for a gap year. You'll still have to reapply for financial aid, and you may not get the same package as you got the first time because it's based on new information. So if your child, but I think just to be safe, in case the gap year doesn't happen, I would apply for financial aid anyways, you know, so you have it in case they decide to not take the gap year and actually attend, so you can get some aid. Some schools, if you get a merit aid offer as a high school senior but then decide to take a gap year, some schools will offer that scholarship and say, okay, we'll freeze your scholarship, we'll freeze your place, but you need to tell us by a certain date that you're definitely coming back from your gap year. And they typically don't like it if you're doing it to just go and work and earn some money and take some classes at the community college. You might have to be doing something really meaningful during that gap year to enhance you as a student. Okay, is there a question here? You're welcome. Mm-hmm. It is possible to negotiate or appeal. So there are two different things. And we toured Fordham in New York, and the tour guide told us the same thing. Everybody gets a new package, just call and complain. I'm like, I'm sure the admissions and financial aid office does not know that this tour guide is out there telling every family on open house day this story. So, yeah. Well, see, you know, those very expensive selective schools like Bowdoin or Harvard or Yale, you know, they don't want to, if you get accepted, that's the hard part. They don't want to make it difficult for you to come. But there is a line in the sand where they can't pass it. So they want to know if you've had a drop in income or if, you know, you've been affected by a hurricane and your house isn't worth what you said your house was worth, or whatever it is that could be affecting you. They try to make it as pleasable as possible. So there's two ways that you can change your situation. It doesn't always work. One is negotiating. Negotiating works pretty well with some of the second and third tier private schools. So let's say your kid's accepted to Stonehill, Merrimack, and Assumption. In my mind, those three schools are exactly the same. It's just a different location across Massachusetts. And Stonehill gives you $20,000 in a merit aid offer. Merrimack gives you $15,000, and Assumption gives you $10,000. You can call Assumption admissions office and say, you know what, we love your school, we want to stay in the Worcester area, we've been there 10 times, this is our first choice, but we have better offers from Merrimack and Stonehill. Can you sweeten the deal? Can you, look at our situation again and see if there's anything you can do? For those type of schools, we've found, I don't know the percentage, but maybe 50% of the time they'll come back with more money. They may not match the other offer, but on average they come back with about $2,000 to $3,000 more. That's $2,000 to $3,000 for a phone call. It's pretty good time spent. So don't be shy about that. I mean, you're making a big investment for 4 years for your life savings, for your child's future. Go ahead and call. All you've got is your pride. They might say, no, we don't negotiate. First offer is our final offer, or they may say, give us a week or two, we'll get back to you. And the other way is appealing. Appealing really means that you have a change in your financial circumstances, or there's unique financial circumstances that are not reflected on the applications that we want you to take into account. When I was at Anna Maria, I'll distinctly remember I got a letter from a family, 10-page handwritten letter about all the things that they wanted me to know, including how much they spent on dog food. Like, I really don't care that you bought a very large dog and it cost a lot to feed him. That's your choice. But a tree fell on your house and your insurance didn't cover the repairs. Or medical bills is another one. If you've had a medical problem in your family, or you have a younger child who needs medical care for the rest of their life, or special schooling, definitely tell them about that, because that's unique and different from most families. Even if you lost your job for 7 years and you drained your 401k and you have high credit card bills because you were unemployed for 7 years, That's kind of a unique situation. And that none of that will get shown on the forms. As you notice, we talked about income and assets. The financial aid forms don't ask you anything about your credit card debt, your car loans, your mortgage, any of your expenses. So it's just income and assets and family size. They're looking at what's coming in. They're not looking at what's going out. So, yes?
One of the slides it mentioned, or part of the, to fill out, it said the number of households.
Mm-hmm.
It said number of children in college. Does that mean the number of children going into or currently in that?
So the question is worded, as of today, the day you fill out the form, how many people are in your household that you're providing more than 50% support? So that could include grandparents, grandchildren, nieces, nephews. If you have people living in your house that you're supporting more than 50%, you can count them in your household. And then going to college next year. It says who will be enrolled in college at least half-time next year. So in my situation, when my twins went off to college, my oldest daughter was still taking classes part-time. So I was able to put that I had 3 kids in college. The more you have in college, the lower your expected family contribution. So let's say you apply for financial aid for your oldest child, and the expected family contribution is $30,000. But then you have another child coming up right behind it. So you fill out the forms the next year, and you now say you have 2 in college. Instead of $30,000, if everything else, your income and assets are similar, it's going to say they think you can afford 15 for one and 15 for the other. But since now your expected family contribution is lower, both kids will qualify for more financial aid while you have that overlap of more than one in college. Yes? Yes. On the MIFA website, there is an application. Good question. So the MIFA rate is set every year. It's usually 1 to 2 percentage points lower than what the federal Parent Plus loan is. So I think right now it's at 5.7%. The credit check is a little bit more rigorous. They are going to look at how much debt you already have and what you currently, what other obligations you have for your income. And it's a 15-year repayment instead of a 10-year repayment. So they offer 3 different options, and most loans for education will offer these 3 options. Number 1, defer all payments until after graduation, but interest is accruing during that time. So your loan is growing, and they'll give you one interest rate for that, usually the highest interest rate. The second option is to pay interest only while the student's in school, but defer payment on the principal until after graduation. And that usually has a middle-of-the-road interest rate. And then there is make all payments starting now. So as soon as the money hits the school, usually September 1st, you'll start paying on that sometime in October. So for MIFA, you either have to live in Massachusetts or go to college at a Massachusetts school. Sure, you as a Mass resident, even if you go out of state, you can borrow that loan. Yes. Except for the federal student loan, every other loan that the student is on as the borrower will require a cosigner. Good question. No, I have not found an educational loan that has a penalty for early repayment. So if you win the lottery or whatever and you want to pay off the loan in full, there's never a penalty for doing that. Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. Good questions. Yes? Right. So
You want me to speak to that?
Pardon me?
You want me to speak to that? Was
Sure.
he asking about the John and Abigail Adams? So in October, we should be receiving the list of John and Abigail Adams recipients for the class of 2018. So we'll notify students and parents which students have actually qualified for the John and Abigail Adams. And if you qualify for the John and Abigail Adams scholarship, you do not have to do anything else except choose to attend a state school. and it will cover tuition for that school. And so for the state schools, I mean, the tuition rate is set by the Department of Higher Education, all right? What it doesn't include is fees. And every campus has different fee structure. So in reality, the John and Abigail Adams and the Koplik Scholarship is roughly about $1,800 to $2,000 a year. That's tuition. You don't get out of the fees. So the fees at the different campuses are like $8,000, $9,000. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, no. So it's I don't know what it is. All I know is that the John and Abigail Adams and the Koplik Award, if you earn those and go to a state school, are worth roughly about $1,800
I had something
to
in my
$2,000
notes.
a year.
It's not on the screen, but it's I think it said 1,734 for UMass.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know what was on their website or if there was an error. I don't know. All I know is that if you utilize that, that's roughly what it's about. I don't know if they made a mistake. I think a good estimate is $1,800 for a state school if you're awarded one of those awards. And we'll be sending out the names for the John and Abigail Adams.
The Stafford loan is the federal loan that I was talking about for the $5,500. Yeah, it's a federal direct student loan. It used to be called a Stafford loan, so it has 100 different names, but it's basically the same exact loan that I borrowed in 1980 when I went to college. So it's a federal direct Stafford subsidized or unsubsidized student loan. Perkins loans are from the federal government. Certain schools offer them. It's been on the way out for years. They keep saying they're going to cancel it. Very few schools have it, and you have to it's need-based, so you have to qualify for it from the FAFSA form, and then the school has to say, yes, we have the money, and we're going to give it to you. If you get the subsidized Stafford loan that's interest-free, that is need-based. But even if your expected family contribution is through the roof, you can always get the unsubsidized. So it's offered to everybody.
The merit scholarships for the state schools, is that just the Abigail Adams type, or like?
No, there are other scholarships that the state schools offer, again, to the highest ranking kids in their applicant pool. And it may be dependent on major, like going into business or engineering or nursing or something, they might, but it's determined through the admissions application. Yes. Right. Right. We call that bait and switch, where families receive one offer as a freshman and then they reapply to send their kid off for sophomore year, and it's gone way down. Our research has kind of shown that most of the time there's been a change in your finances that you kind of forgot happened, and so you didn't qualify for as much. Or the student had a scholarship, like in my case with my son, he had a scholarship, but he didn't meet the GPA requirement, so that went away. So there are a lot of things that can affect it. Most schools, I think, are pretty smart about not doing that. When they give a freshman a package, they're budgeting for the next 4 years, knowing that that money's going to be there. It doesn't happen as often as it used to. And I think with social media, knowing that you would be outraged and put it all over Facebook that XYZ college stinks and I hate this place. So they're very careful about that. And the net price calculator. That's another thing that people say to me is, how sure can I be that my net price calculator estimate is going to be what I actually receive? And I think the schools, if anything, might even underestimate the net price calculator, because they don't want to go out there and show you a dollar amount and then not be able to back it up. So I think they're pretty accurate because of the way social media would kill them if they did that. Yes?
So the money that we have set aside, saved for college, did you say it was 5%? That they use that as, what are your, or they calculate it on the 5%?
Right. So when you're filling out the financial aid forms and they ask what's the current value of the parents' investments, your 529 savings plans, 529 prepaid plans, and covered L accounts, or any other investments that you have, need to be reported, as long as they're not retirement. 401ks and IRAs are not reported. And then when it goes through the calculation to come up with your expected family contribution, it's assessed at about 5%. So if you have $100,000 in your 529 plan, the colleges and the federal government are going to think you can afford $5,000 towards college. So it's pretty good. And everyone goes, why is it that way? I'm like, shh, don't tell anybody. It is that way. We don't want it to change. No, the only reason it's counted by income in that scenario was because it was the grandparents. If it's the parents, it doesn't count. When it's a gift from an outside family member, then it counts as a gift to the student. So when you use your 529 plan, it does not count as income. Sorry about that confusion. The other part of it is the student assets. We didn't get into that too much, but if your child has a trust fund or a uniform gift to minors or a custodial account where it's their money that they get when they become an adult, that money on the financial aid process counts at 20%. So that's where some people, they think they're doing the right thing and they're saving for college and they're putting their money away in their child's name, and they get a little bit of a tax break for doing that because it's taxed. The income on that is taxed at the child's rate of taxation. It can bite you in the financial aid area because it's counted at 20% instead of 5% like the parents' assets. Right, the children's income, again, it's for 2016 for freshman year. They can earn up to $6,500 before any of it is counted towards the expected family contribution. Once you reach that $6,500, then it's counted at 50%. So, yeah, they figure if the student has earnings and money, that should go to college first.
I have a question. I think it's probably the scholarship area.
Mm-hmm.
So opportunities like ROTC,
Mm-hmm.
or other federal jobs that you put in the pipeline on. You didn't get into things like that tonight, but your resources that you listed, is that a good place to start?
Yes. Right. I can speak directly. If you want to talk afterwards, my daughter is doing an Army ROTC scholarship. And as a mom, it was, oh my God. But as holder of the pocketbook, I was like, oh my God. So she got a full scholarship for 3 years, but she has to go in the Army when she's done. But it's been a great program for her. It's not for everyone, and every branch of the military has that option. Yeah. So I think, you could do a search on Google for scholarships and you'd be dead before you were done looking at them all. But I think scholarships.com is a good one. Or if you have a lead like that, CIA. So you could do CIA undergraduate college scholarship programs. Try to be as specific in your search as you can. And if you, the other thing is if you belong to any associations, if your child has ADHD and you belong to a support group for ADHD, search their website, or ADHD Parents of America or something. So a lot of times they are these smaller groups that have the resources for specific situations.
My kids have Social Security benefits. Their income is still below the taxable limit. Do the Social Security benefits have to be?
Social Security benefits are not reported on the FAFSA form. Yeah. But if you've taken that money year after year and put it in the child's name in a bank account, that could hurt them. Yeah. Yeah. So you should be spending it as you can. Oh, so the 529 plan, even though your child might be the beneficiary of that plan and you plan on using it to pay for college, it's counted as a parent asset in the expected family contribution calculation, so it's only treated at 5%. So even if you had $100,000 in your 529 plan and you reported that on your FAFSA form, it's only going to increase your expected family contribution by $5,000. So it's a good thing. I mean, it does get counted, but it's counted at the lowest possible rate. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So those right. It was very confusing. So for those of you who have older kids and might have been through this, it used to be 1 year back. So 2 years ago, when kids graduate, what year did she graduate? 16. So when you graduated from high school in 2016, you put your 2015 information. And then they changed it to 2 years back. So in 2016, they said, yeah. So there were families who used 2015 income 2 years in a row on their FAFSA form. Yeah. No, it's now going forward, it's always going to be 2 years back. So if you have another younger child who's graduating in 2020, it will be 2018. So it's always 2 years back from the year they're graduating. Yeah. Yep, that was correct. If you have a senior, yes. Yep. All right, I am going to put the mic down, but thank you very much. I will stick around if anyone has any personal questions they want to ask.